Welcome to another amazing episode of Who's Your Band. If you notice, there is not an annoying little guy who's going to be kicking off the show like he normally does. My co-host Jeff Paul, he's not here today. He might pop in later. He said he's not sure. He's got a family commitment to do today, which is fine by me because you know what? I'm the person who would have been taking the lead with this episode anyway because Jeff knows nothing about wrestling. He doesn't know much about music either, but he knows nothing about wrestling. So I wanted to bring on a great guest who I've been trying to get on for about, 5 or 6 months at this point. I was able to get the guitar player from Volbeat, a guitar player from Kiss, Matt Pinfield, the Billy Sheehan, one of the greatest bass players who's ever walked the face of the earth. But I couldn't get this schlub on for 6 months until I finally narrowed him down. One of my favorite people on this earth, professional wrestler extraordinaire, Shawn Donavan. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. You forgot to put the horrible family member named Shawn.
Yes, we'll get into that too. Well, you know what? I wasn't going to mention it the whole episode, but now you had to be a dick and ruin it.
But yes, I want to get the rub.
Shawn is my cousin,
famous comedian.
Yes, we are both named Shawn. We are both members of the same family. However, one is better looking, more talented, makes a lot more money in his craft, and the other one is named Shawn Donavan. This is gonna be a fun episode. This is gonna be a fun one. We're gonna have fun today. Yes. So let's break it down quick. Why don't you tell everybody your story? Like when did you decide that you wanted to become a professional wrestler?
Well, my grandfather, of course, the Italian heritage. When I was young, everybody that watched pro wrestling, that or in any sport that is very heritage driven, always loves the Italians. And my grandfather is someone that loved watching it and loved Bruno Sammartino. Would always watch it. MSG Network used to, have a channel. They would always do the live shows from there, and he would watch. And it was pretty close to around the time when he passed away very young. But I remember watching it with him one day when I was playing around, and I was just mesmerized. I was drawn to it. And, I remember the match. It was SD Jones versus Baron Miguel Cicluna. And I was just drawn by the Baron of how he controlled that crowd. And I'm no more than 5 years old at that point, but just, it clicks. And I started watching it as a child through my teenage years, never stopped. Never knew that there was something called independent pro wrestling, and just, met a couple of guys through my brother-in-law, who his brother loved wrestling, and we connected on that. And he knew different people that he was going to independent shows and introduced me to that world. And I just became enamored with it because I was up front and center and, wasn't barred by a barricade, and guys were very friendly. And throughout the times, I got to know different people that were there that were running shows. And one thing led to another. I saw that a school that had been opened had a fantasy camp for like a one day, and that the winner of the tryout camp, that had no experience, just to test the waters, would win free training, because obviously any school would love somebody that's athletic. So why wouldn't a guy like me that's never been in a gym before at that point, why wouldn't I win? So, but I think, like, when you watch anything, and you can probably attest to this, being a comedian, when you watch it, you kind of understand how it works a little bit. If you're enamored with it, you kind of know the cadence, the pauses, what they're looking for. And it's the same with pro wrestling. Watching it as a kid, I kind of said when I went to this camp, okay, I kind of know how they hit the ropes. I kind of know how they fall. You kind of study it without really knowing you're studying it. And I went into this camp with about 16 other guys, and I didn't win. But the promoter pulled me aside and he said, hey, unfortunately you didn't come in number one, but what I can do is you kind of scored number 2 on our list. So I can offer you, half the price of training. And I didn't really kind of have the money at the time. My father was very skeptical of it. Not for any reason. He just wanted me to be safe, but I had money saved away, and I could afford the half amount. And I cut him a check that day. And that was That was June 6th, 2001. So in a couple of weeks, I'll hit 20 years of being in the sport.
Wow.
That's kind of how I got started. So
That's
I think
amazing.
everybody in every version of entertainment always has, no one has the same story.
No, it's very true.
Everyone's path is completely different. And it's funny to think back. It'd be 20 years since I first started, and I've done a lot. I've been through a lot. I'm very grateful for the opportunities I've been given. And the best thing is that I'm happy and I'm healthy, you know, and
Right.
so that's kind of my journey. We can always get into stuff along the way, but as you know, being in entertainment, everybody's path is completely different.
Absolutely. I mean, people always ask me, like, how long is it before you actually made money doing comedy?
Yeah.
And I was again, you're exactly right. The paths are very different, because I know people who took 10 years before they went on the road just to be a host. And I was on the road within 6 months.
Yeah.
It's just a different dynamic, and it's just the way that you kind of steer your path.
Yeah.
It's
great to have people that give you opinions and want to help you along the way, but no one knows your path better than you. No one knows your goals better than you. So no one is going to push you harder than you push yourself. And if you're just waiting for somebody to give you that shove in the ass, that's not going to happen.
Nope.
They'll be there to help guide you, but you've got to do all the work yourself. And I was never someone that sat around waiting for somebody to do it for me. It's not how I was raised. I was raised to work. So I was raised to make sacrifices and do whatever it took. And that's what I did. And when people take chances on themselves, you're going to stumble and you're going to fall along the way. As long as you get back up and you dust yourself off and you just push, you'll get to where you want to be. Sometimes it may not be exactly where you want to be, and I think maybe at your point in your career, the way I look at it is, and maybe you feel the same way, is, do you necessarily, in my world, need a national contract to be successful? I don't believe so. I don't think you need to have an HBO special in order to define your success. If you have a following and you can still help draw crowds to events and fans are there to actually pay tickets to see you, to me, that's a success in its own right there. So I think success is what you make of it.
Oh, I agree 100%, 100%, because, there's the grandiose thing. Everybody, like, look, you want to be, you're not starting to become a professional wrestler and not want to be a major star.
Right.
And just like, if you're a comedian, of course you want to have the TV show or the movie or whatever, but you go along that path and then you also kind of reassess a little bit where the direction is going, and, this is things that we've talked about personally too. We also started off, not later in life, but you started off younger. Right. As a professional wrestler. I started off later as a comic. You took a little time off. Yep. And one of the things that I've noticed, watching your career too, is I get pissed. I legitimately get pissed because not in the way you're thinking. I watch the way you conduct yourself. I watch the promos. I watch the matches. And without sounding like a dick, if this was 10 years ago, you'd be a top star right now in a major federation. Yeah.
And I think the difference in that is just how society has shifted, at least in my world too. 10 years ago, our business was different. 10 years ago, they were still looking for guys that were 6'3" and 6'5" and larger than life. And, here I am 6 feet tall. Nowadays, they want that, especially because they want guys with experience to be able to help teach a lot of these other guys the foundation that is not happening a lot now. And who knows, same to you, right? We don't get into our fields because we just want to, toy around on the, local circuits. We do it because we want to make it to those big companies. But like you said, I think as we get into our careers a little bit later, we start to reassess and say, okay, maybe that's not what my path is going to end up being. It doesn't mean that you don't work hard and strive and take those opportunities when they put themselves in front of you. But you also take a step back and say, look what I've done so far. And maybe there is a place for me in this world. Maybe it's not on TV as that persona. Maybe it's a behind the scenes role. Maybe
Sure.
it's helping the younger guys out. Maybe it's in a different way. There's so many different avenues. That's why I was always taught in our world, learn how to do everything. Don't just learn
Right.
how to be an on-air performer. Learn how to be a referee, learn how to manage, learn how to ring announce, learn how to do the music, the lights. You never know what opportunities are become. And I saw many guys that I came up with that went on to have careers in bigger companies, just not as on TV personalities. And I'm sure you've seen the same thing
Yeah.
along the way. So I still think there's room to display and put our passion out there. It just may end up being in different roles.
Yeah, you pivot. You have to pivot, and that's
Yes.
that's the thing. I mean,
Exactly.
like you said, I mean, you could become a referee, you could become an agent backstage, you can be running a wrestling school. Like for
Right.
me, I could be going into joke writing for a bigger comic, or I can go
Right.
into writing a screenplay, or starting a comedy school, which I would never do that because it's the biggest piece of shit you've ever imagined. You can't teach comedy.
Right. Well, I mean, I look at what I've been offered recently, and a lot of people have reached out to me to do seminars. And that's a step for me when I decide my in-ring days are over, that I can get started now and I can start giving back in different ways, and I can grow a different business there. And maybe that leads me into opening up a school that I've always wanted to do at some point, or maybe it might lead me into running my own promotion. I don't know what that's going to take, but like you said, you have to pivot in certain areas. And when those opportunities present themselves, take a step back and look at what that could end up branching out for you as well. And if it's the right move, give it a shot. I've done a few of them so far. And I just had someone ask me about doing one again last night. I said, just talk to me. Let's go. So you
Great
never know
thing.
where your career is going to take off. And if you have a passion for it, there's a place for everybody somewhere within that industry
True.
if they have that passion.
Yeah, and that's very true. And we've talked many a time about how struggles we've had or things that were going on great with comedy and with wrestling. And you're right, there is room for everybody. And that's one thing. You may not like certain things about your industry, but you have to understand that there are necessary evils. Like for me, I don't like prop comics. Like Carrot Top. I can't say that the guy hasn't made hundreds of millions of dollars. It's just not my cup of tea. You know what I mean?
I agree. 100%.
You are a bruiser in the ring. There's no gimmick involved. You just go in there, you beat the shit out of the guy, and you're old school. And there's other guys, like, look, there's amazing wrestlers like Velveteen Dream. Okay. Yeah. He's a great wrestler. He's got a very flamboyant gimmick, but there's a place for that.
Right. And there's a place for everybody. Like for me, I said this yesterday at an event. Some young guys that have been given some opportunities with AEW that were on this event. And I know them and asked them how their time there went, because I've been there. And, when I watch the way they are, is my personality just like theirs? No less entertaining, just in a different way. Can I move like them? No. I wish I could flip and bend the way some of these guys can and can be as acrobatic as they are. My body just wasn't built like that. So I rely on what my strengths are. And so I think there is a place for everybody in any line of entertainment, as long as you put the work into that persona as much as you do into your performance in front of the crowd. People will see that, they will take note, and they'll be able to decipher, who are the guys the people they should be watching. Just like when it comes to comedy, you'll see 5 different people at a show, and you can tell which are the ones that are really putting in the work behind the scenes with their act, and who are the ones that are just, yeah, it's cool, I'll do this on the weekends, I'll be okay with the 5 guys, the 5 people that clap. You don't want that. You want to go out there. You want that crowd to go ape shit over your set. And when they leave, you want them to say, man, those other comics, they were good, but that Shawn Morton guy blew me out of the water. I could not stop laughing. And that's the biggest compliment you can get, is when someone comes up to you after an event and says, you were amazing. And
it's like the 3-person comedy show is the gold standard for a comedy show. Now, if I'm hosting it, I am very high energy.
Yeah.
Very, very high energy, because that's the most important part of the show. Okay. And if I do the middle spot, it's the same thing. I want to give them a great show. But if I'm headlining a show and I have the chance to bring my opener with me or my host with me. I am bringing somebody who I feel is as good as me, if not better than me, because I'm not that type of egomaniac who wants to have a shitty show and then me come and be the savior. No, I want to work my ass off at that last spot because I want to show that it's a huge joint effort when you're doing that. And just like if you were, say you're headlining you're headlining an indie show, right? You're the champ and you're headlining it. You would want the match before you to be fucking off the charts because it's for the greater good of everything. Because you got to put your ego aside, and see, and it's a huge puzzle.
Yeah, when you look at, and you and I have talked about this at length before. When it comes to structuring a comedy show, it's no different than structuring any type of entertainment event, a wrestling event in particular. The most important matches on a professional wrestling card are the opening match, the match before intermission, and the main event. And sometimes the semi-main event, depending on what performers are on and what matchups are there. The opening match, very similar to, the host, that's the first person they're seeing or the first match they're seeing. And they're relying on that person or that match to go out there and open up with something really entertaining to get the crowd going.
Right.
And the rest of the card follows through. And as long as everybody knows what their role is, everyone's building to that main event or everyone's building to that headliner. And that's how you run an event. If you, and I know we'll get into this when it comes to music, if a band plays their number one hit in the middle of the set list, and that's the song I want to hear, why do I want to stick around? I heard the song I want, I can leave.
Very true.
You make them wait. And that's the thing. You don't put the main person appearing on an event, you don't put them on first or second or just before intermission, because at intermission, I won't feel like that douchebag was going to just get up and leave because I already saw the match I wanted. That's the whole point. There's a psychology behind everything that's done in the entertainment world. And that's no different in the world of comedy, right? Richard Pryor is not going up, I'm sorry, before Kevin Hart. They're both great entertainers in their own right. But I came for Richard Pryor. If he's coming on before Kevin Hart, I'm leaving. I have no reason to see Kevin Hart at that point.
Well, you got a better chance of catching Kevin Hart now. I'll just play that right now.
But you kind of get my point.
I completely understand it. Yeah.
But to your point there as well, you want that person on before you to be really good, because I also think internally what it does for that match or that performer coming on after is, damn, his set was good, or damn, that match was good. Okay, so now I have to bring it up a little bit more because I'm the main event. And the people that win are the fans. The people in the audience are the ones that win because they didn't see just one great match. They saw another great match follow that. And now the fans leave happy. They may forget what happened earlier because the two main matches or the headliner is what they were there for. But there are going to be people there that are going to remember who was on the undercard or who was there before. And they might say, Shawn Morton wasn't the headliner, but that damn guy was good. I'm going to check out his page. And next time he's in town, I'm coming and I'm bringing 3 more friends with me. You
also have the other people, though, who don't want the strong people in front of them.
Right. You're absolutely right. Yes. And there's a caveat to that, too. There are, and I hate to say it, there's a seedy underbelly and a political business behind everything, especially in entertainment.
Question.
And I've seen it on shows before. I have seen the way that guys will speak to promoters and owners, and they'll try to work their verbal magic. And it's kind of sad to see. The way I look at it is, if that's what you have to do, then that means you are not confident in your abilities or your work to be in the role that you're in. So 100%. You feel you have to drop somebody down. And when I see that in locker rooms, when I was younger, I used to get very upset. And again, you get older, you get a little bit wiser. And when you hear that, you just kind of take your stuff and you move it to a different area because you just don't want to be bothered with that. You know your role, your Big confidence. Time. So, hey, if you have to follow me, I'm sorry you do. But that's on you. That's the way I look at it. So those that want to put themselves on before somebody like me or anybody else, they don't have the confidence or their ability to be that kind of performer. That tells me you really shouldn't be there. You shouldn't be doing it.
I agree.
I
completely agree.
So
I will give you props for one thing, and for our fans who are listening, that we do have a lot of wrestling people who are into the show. Mr. Donovan here is the only person to appear on Impact Wrestling, WWE programming, and AEW all within 13 months.
Yeah. Actually, I thought I was the only one, and I'll still take the compliment. There was one other person who wrestles alongside me. His name is Bobby Wayward. I was actually wrong on that. So he and I are the only two to ever appear on all three programming main shows within a 13-month span.
That's incredible, though, when you think about it. I remember you being a dick and not telling anybody that you were going to be on Monday Night Raw. And I remember exactly where I was. I was at a concert at Starland Ballroom on a Monday night, because that's what we used to do when the world was normal. We'd go to a concert on a Monday night.
Yep.
And I got home and I got in bed and I looked at Facebook and I'm seeing this stuff and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, and then I was so exhausted. I worked all day. I got home after this concert, rocking with my cock out. It was amazing. And I had to go into my living room and turn my DVR on, because here he is, this little asshole, doesn't tell anybody that he's on freaking Monday Night Raw. And I'm not kidding, and I'm not saying this for the effect of the show, I literally had tears running down my face because I was so happy for you.
Well, and you were also probably wearing your Motorhead boxers and white socks and dancing around.
I don't wear any boxers, actually. I was completely commando.
Oh, that's right. You told me you were rocking out with your cock out.
I was rocking out with the cock out. Well, how was that experience, though? Was it? I know how you got the gig, but just coming from an entertainer point of view, that had to be fucking amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, I was booked there just to be an extra for that day, to be involved in a multi-person backstage segment. And they were rewriting, and one of the producers who owns a promotion who I work for, he had an idea in mind, because they were looking for somebody to work an enhancement match with an individual. They wanted somebody that was almost his size. And out of all the people that were booked for that, he felt I was the best one. He came and found me and said, "Hey, this is the idea. You still have to go, you have to get cleared by trainers when you go there. They have to do an assessment to make sure that you're physically capable of doing that, because if I'm not and I get hurt, they can be liable." So I understand that. As soon as I passed it, I told him. He's like, "Okay." We put the segment together, and an incredible experience, because if it's something your entire life, I've done extra work for them many, many times, and have never had the opportunity to do an in-ring segment. It's always been backstage, getting beat up by somebody, whatever you name it. Or, they've had nothing for me, so I get paid to just sit in catering and eat all day, which is another amazing feat there. It's very interesting. And coming full circle, a gentleman by the name of Shawn Bennett, who's one of the head referees for WWE, started at the same school that I did a year after me. And he came up to me 5 minutes before. He goes, "I'm your ref. We're going out there." So, "Are you serious?" He goes, "Yes." Once I saw that you were on that sheet, he goes, I immediately politicked and had to change, because he and I have been close friends this is going on now, we're friends for almost, 20 years now at this point, and never been one to have an ego. Always happy to see when friends and good people can make it, because I always believe in spreading good karma. But and I kind of get a little emotional at this too, because it really was a full circle moment. Two kids busting their ass, paying their dues, and one has made it and the other still wants to, but just to have that moment. And he even said to me, "When you go out there, take a moment and soak it in. It's an experience." And I'm used to playing in front of, sometimes upwards of 2,000 people, but to go out in front of arena, there's 18,000 people. And I'm just looking at this during a commercial break, and he's giving me the countdown. And it's funny when you just, when you've been in that environment, you just kind of know what a match is like. So you just go into it, but just being there, just looking around, and I'm like, there's no words that describe it, and I venture to say probably the same thing as you. If you were headlining the Barclays Center, in Brooklyn, New York, you're going to soak that in and say, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. I did that when I worked at Hard Rock. I was the first comic on the stage at the Hard Rock. Yeah. I did their opening week.
And that was amazing to see.
And I had to take a step back too. I did the same exact thing. I took a step back and I was like, you know what? This is the last time. I'm okay with it.
Yeah. And I said the same thing too. It's funny. I said to my buddy Shawn afterwards, I said, if this is the last thing I ever do in wrestling, I'm at peace.
Yeah.
I'm at peace. And it was just the fact that he was in there with me, guiding me through that, just became a full circle moment. Because I cannot tell you the amount of frustrating times we've both had together in the business, and not arguments with each other, but just arguing about our frustrations, tears, crying, happiness, to have a moment like that for myself, but to be able to do it alongside somebody that is a close friend of mine, it kind of puts it on another level, and it just makes you come out of that wanting to work harder. Because you can't let people, because there are people that are out there say, oh, he didn't deserve that, or it should have been me, or whatever.
Many a time.
Yeah. And you know what? And people are entitled to their opinions, but I came out of that wanting to work even harder. Because I said, you know what? Maybe this isn't the place, but I know I belong on a bigger stage. And, I'm still going to work hard if opportunities come. That's how you always should handle it. Never strive and never settle. I'm going to do this and strive to work hard and get to, if there's an opportunity for a bigger level, until my body tells me, hey, no more, your body can't do it anymore. And it's kind of the same thing. Your voice will tell you, or your body will tell you, or your mind will tell you when it's had enough. Yeah. And until then, I know you're going to continue to push hard. And that's the way anybody would.
I always tell people, I've you've done a lot of mentoring with people, you've done a lot of training and coaching and things of that nature too. And I always stress to people when they ask me, can you give me any advice about comedy? The first thing I always tell them is be a good person. And they don't understand why I say that. I said, because if you're a good person in business, the right opportunities are going to come your way.
Yep.
Granted, there's going to be people who are going to backdoor. They're going to be slimy. They're going to be not as talented as you. They're going to be, not as seasoned as you are. And they happen to get opportunities, but you don't badmouth them. You don't do any, you don't worry about anybody else. And you just focus on being yourself and being a good person. And that's, I've had many opportunities come my way because of that.
Yeah.
And there have been people who've been in the business for 20 years longer than me. And they're like, well, how the fuck is this guy playing this casino? Or why is he in the Friars Club when I never got in? Or why is,
I've seen it.
Difference.
And it's sad because I've seen it with people that you were supposed to be close with.
Oh, sure.
And that's another kind of, story for another, topic for another day. But like you said, me having that opportunity to be on those 3 different companies' programs in 13 months is all due to the fact that, number one, all the people that vouched for me in those roles saw that I work hard, I don't complain, I don't bitch and moan, and I don't politic. And I just try to spread good karma, and I treat those individuals how I want them to treat me. Because when young people ask me for advice, the 2 key pieces of advice I give them is, number one, always spread good karma in the business. Don't show negativity. Don't spread negativity, because the age-old adage of you're going to meet the same people going up as you do on the way down. So be careful what you say. The other advice I always give them is an advice by someone who's no longer with us, amazing performer named Chris Candido, who used to come to my school and give a lot of advice to our guys and work with us. And his one key piece of advice that I always give young talent, and it can be portrayed and rephrased in the comedy world too, is don't take yourself seriously. Take what you do in the ring seriously. And that could easily be spun into the comedy world. Don't take yourself seriously with your shtick, but take what you do on that stage seriously.
Right. Some people live their gimmick a little too hard, and that's And
Correct.
that's where you tend to downfall and burn out really quick.
100%. So that's the biggest two pieces of advice I always give young performers who are just starting out. And I had to learn those a lot on my own, because the way I was brought up in our business was, yeah, you were taught all the things in the ring, but you never were really taught any of the etiquette outside. And for the sheer thing of those guys back then, those old time veterans, they wanted to see you fall flat on your face by making the wrong decisions, because they felt that if you were too good in the ring, that you'd somehow take their spot.
Right.
We're in a different time, a different society, different life now. I have happily tell all the guys, I help them in every way. I will, if I see that they post something wrong, that is they're voicing their opinion too hard, I'll send them a private message. Hey, you might want to take this down, and here's why. Some listen and take the advice. Some appreciate the advice, but still leave it up. And that's totally up to them.
Yep.
But that's what you try to do. You try to be that mentor, that leader. And something I always say as well, too, a veteran and a locker room leader are not one and the same.
Correct.
And it could be the same thing in the world of comedy as well. An experienced comedian is not the same as somebody that's going to be, a backstage leader. A lot of times in entertainment, those two roles, people like to try and clash them together. And to me, they are not one and the same.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct. I mean, I remember a weekend with a guy, I won't say his name, but like I was young and I was hosting. I go, do you need a light? And he goes, I'm a professional. And I went, oh, fuck, I picked this guy off. He went up there, supposed to do 45 minutes. He did 45:01 to the dot, right? So the next night, I know now not to ask him to do the light if he needed a light. First show on the second night, he does 45:02. And he's doing word for word of the same night. And then the late show, someone heckled him. And I'm like, thank God, this is going to fuck him up. He's going to get fucked up for this. Now he's going to, right? He handled it. He cut out one joke, 45:01. I'm like, this motherfucker. I was so pissed. I was enraged at this guy. And then that was a very pivotal weekend for me, because I said to myself, you know what? I'm not going to be that dude.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be the guy who is just going through the motions and not trying to contribute, and it's just a paycheck. And I'd rather fall flat on my face
and try something brand new.
Try something brand new. Yeah. Exactly. I trust me. I've done it a lot.
It's the same thing in our world. There are guys that go out there and they do their same set, move for move at the same point in a match. And you're always going to be in front of different audiences. So you have to change up your routine, because one type of audience may not like what you're doing as far as the other audience goes. In my world, I have many different audiences. There are fair shows where there's more kids, where they want more entertainment, and they want more interaction. And then I work events where they're hardcore wrestling fans. So they want like the top style, or they want the crazy moves. So you have to know your audience. You never deviate from what you feel inside is the right persona for you, but you still switch up what you're doing. Maybe there's a joke in your set that is not going to work in front of a certain audience based on that demographic. Maybe it will. You never know, but that's where you have to take. I've taken chances, of tried different styles that are outside of my wheelhouse, which I know a little bit, but not a lot. And some have worked, and in other areas, it didn't get over as well. But
that's
at the same token, right, you take a chance. You learn from it because it's a learning experience. And when you watch it back, you say to yourself, okay, I did this here, or did that there. Maybe I shouldn't have said that here. Maybe I shouldn't have done that here. And I'm sure it's the same thing with you. When you watch your stuff, if you do, and you reassess, maybe that joke doesn't go here. Maybe it goes earlier in the set, or maybe this one goes later. There's a whole dichotomy of how you strip your set apart and put it together. And it's a puzzle piece. It's always moving. It's always ever changing based on so many different factors, and it's no different than in the world of wrestling.
Right. I mean, there's times where you're going to be going full force for 10 minutes, and then you're going to have to, throw a rest hold in for 2 minutes
Yes,
and
exactly.
slow the pace down a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there are those fair shows where you just want to. The fair shows are designed to draw people to your main show, so you just give them a taste.
Yep.
Don't give them everything. If you give them just a taste and they like you or they like the entire event, well, chances are they're now going to buy a ticket to your regular events.
Sure.
And they may end up becoming regulars. So there's such a whole dichotomy of, and you and I've spoken about this, not just comedy and wrestling, it's all entertainment.
Right.
There's a way to break down how to do everything. It's just all about finding your flavor. The way I was taught by Dr. Tom Pritchard, who's another guy that I credit with doing a lot of training for me, he always said, wrestling and entertainment are all different, or they're all ice cream. It's just different flavors.
Exactly.
So I take a little bit of Rocky Road. I take a little bit of, vanilla, a little bit of mint, and that just becomes what my flavor is.
Definitely a little tutti frutti too.
Yes, I definitely love the tutti frutti flavor. It just really, it puts me over the top.
What was your first entrance song?
Oh man, I've had a couple. Well, my first was, so if you remember the band, The Cult, Firewoman, loved them. Thanks to my sister, because I used to have to put the milk crate on the floor for her to get up and be able to put the CD in for her. So they came out with, it was one of their last albums that they had done real original music. And I don't remember the album, but the song was called Rise. It was very heavy. It was a very, very fast riff. And it just kind of resonated with me. But then when I was out there, I'm like, is this the right song? And then the next show, I went completely in a different direction. And my theme song was Demon Speeding by Rob Zombie.
Oh, wow.
And that, to me, actually, my trainer got pissed off because I didn't ask him about changing my music. He preferred the first one. So I stuck with that for a while. And then when I did a gear change and became a heel, I was looking for music. And I ended up going to see Ozzy Osbourne at the Meadowlands with Rob Zombie and and a band called Mudvayne.
Mm-hmm.
Not my type of music, but they had an opener in the beginning that I'd never heard of a band called Soil. And I think they were kind of they're just getting their start. And I can't remember the name of the song right off the top of my head, but it was definitely off their second album. But I ended up using that for many years. And there was a riff in there that I can't remember. I've been through doing so much in that. Some of the guys in the locker room used to like joke, and they would in funny ways would sing like the lyrics to the song and all that. And then, I went through other things. I ended up using Janet Jackson's Black Cat when I was doing a little bit more of a flamboyant thing later on. And then most recently, from a couple of years now, I've discovered an amazing band called Airborne. They're like the second coming of AC/DC. Their riffs are almost the same. And I found it after I took some time off because the lyrics resonated with me. And there's a song called Back in the Game. Mm-hmm. And then when I saw that Cobra Kai came out and they were using that as the main song for the first season, one of my buddies messaged me, he's like, yeah, guess what? Everybody's going to start using this song on indie shows.
Absolutely.
Now.
Absolutely.
And now it's funny working some shows more of as in a babyface role, which is kind of weird for me, but I don't change who I am. But I think I've been on so many events that a lot of fans respect my work that sometimes all I have to do is just kind of flip my mannerisms and they know. I started using a song by a band I just discovered called Heat.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of this band before. The word heat is actually predicated by periods after each of the letters.
Okay.
So it's H.E.A.T. And they're like an 80s rock band with a very 2000s flavor. And I really dig, I've listened to their full albums while I work out. And there is a song on there that has a very similar fast-paced riff to Rise. And it's called One by One. And it just has this energy to it that I can almost picture myself coming out to that. And with my personality and how I conduct myself on an entrance, like I know I can get the crowd involved in it. And the first time I used it, fans were having a great time with it. So it was awesome. So when I think about everything and been doing this 20 years, I think about like the evolution of like the music that I've used. Because I've never been one to want to use, a lot of people use like, what's the top song now, just to get that extra little, pop from the crowd, just because the music is there. But it falls flat because the music doesn't fit the personality. It doesn't fit the persona. And it's probably no different than when a comedian takes the stage and they have like a little bit of a music. Does it fit their personality, or are they doing it just because it's the in song right now?
Right.
And it's the same thing. I've always strived to find music that fits what my personality is, that matches who I am, because it adds to the persona. And there is literally a psychology for every little thing that is done. And it's so subtle that most fans would not think of. And maybe some will watch this and say, okay, I get it now. It's, but that's something that you're not necessarily taught. You kind of learn that over time.
Right.
You
It's
overhear conversations. Yep. You pull different veterans aside and ask advice. Or if you have guys that have been on a national level that are on an event and you can get a chance to sit down and pick their brains, like that is what everyone in entertainment should be doing. And one of my buddies yesterday told me that Tom Hanks had a quote where he had said, if you are not stealing from the greats, you're a dope. And it's true. And I don't think he means steal it like verbatim, but steal their intent.
Sure.
Like
and you
why
learn.
they do it. Yeah.
Right. And you learn, like, look, there's, I don't know if it's so much in wrestling. I mean, you could in a way, but I mean, in comedy, when you're first starting out, all you have is your influences. So my voice is completely different 13 years later than it was when I first started, because again, I liked certain comics, and, the way you write jokes is kind of like them. You can pattern yourself after them, but it takes you a long time to find your voice, and it takes you a long time to find your own persona.
Right. And you take little bits and pieces of those influences and you insert them into your persona.
Yep.
Not to the point where you're blatantly stealing, but you're taking little things. And that eventually, like I'm talking about having all ice cream, but different flavors, that's another way of looking at it too. You have different comedic influences that influence your voice and your cadence and the way that you speak. And it's the same for me when I do promos or my in-ring work. They're all bits and pieces of people that I've studied, people that I've been a fan of, people that resonated with me when I watched as a kid. And it's kind of like, in a way, a little bit of paying homage to them because they influenced me, just like those guys were influenced with guys before them. And it's the same learning curve all the way down the line.
I see so many of my favorite, because I wasn't the guy who was like the Hulk Hogan fan and things like that. I was the guy who loved the guys who would just beat the shit out of each other. And there's so many of those people that I see in you and your style, like Stan Hansen and Bruiser Brody and Terry Gordy and
Terry Funk, all those guys. Yeah.
Oh man, it broke my heart to roast him. Can I just tell you? Completely broke my heart because he was such a nice guy.
I know.
Well, I want to go back to one thing. I mean, music plays a huge part in wrestling.
Yes, it does.
It plays a gigantic part in wrestling. I can remember always going to ROH shows. Years ago, we would constantly go to ROH shows. And this is back when when the WWE lineup they have now was ROH.
Right.
You're talking about, Daniel Bryan and Cesaro and Rollins, and all these guys were just there. I can remember when Bryan Danielson would come out to the Final Countdown by Europe.
Yep.
And that was a big thing. And then they would do the whole streamer thing into the ring. Yep. Cut forward 2 years later, my friend gets married and he's coming out to the Final Countdown. And he tells
Great wedding song.
It's his wedding song, is his walk-in wedding song. He tells his wife, no, I'm just a real big fan of the song. No, he was a big fan of Bryan Danielson.
Right.
He didn't tell his wife. So he's walking out, and me and two other people are going, best in the world, best. And she's looking like, what are these people? Who's the best? Who's the best? And we completely blew his spot
why
up.
are husbands always like hiding the wrestling thing? I never understood that.
I don't get it either, man. But one thing I with the theme songs, it's amazing. Like I can go and put on Cult of Personality, which is a song that came out when I was 13 years old.
Yep.
And I loved when I was 13 years old. Now I cannot hear it without thinking of CM Punk.
Correct. And it's just there's certain songs that resonate with you that you can put, and because the way I look at it, music, there's always a memory inside your head for anything in life when you hear a song, right? You hear a certain song and you listen to that when you broke up with your first girlfriend, or you listen to this song and it was, the first time you and your significant other, ever went out on a date, and you automatically have a flood of memories from that, where you were when you heard that song. And for people in entertainment, it's no different. Certain fans that go to independent shows, they may not know who's on the card, but they'll know who's about to come out because they hear the song. And, one of them is an independent icon named Matt Tremont.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes out to one of Journey's songs. And forgive me, because I blank sometimes with names of songs, and maybe you know it. It's one of their songs that has like the longest intros.
It's not Don't Stop Believing.
I'm sorry?
Not Don't Stop Believing, is it?
No. I can't remember it. It'll come back to me, but the fans know it's him coming out, and they stomp their feet to the sound of the music, or they get up and they slam their chairs to the sound of the music. And imagine what it does for that performer behind that curtain getting ready to go out there. But on a fan's level, like, they're with it.
Yeah.
And now they just know, and they also know the style of that performer. So they know when he comes out, it's carnage.
Yeah.
And when he walks through that curtain, the place goes absolutely nuts, which means you don't have to do anything at that point. You could stand on that stage with your microphone, or you could sit in the ring in a chair, urinate on the chair, and the crowd is still going to go nuts.
Exactly.
So it's no different entertainment than wrestling, especially the music helps. When you're over, you're over. It doesn't ever, it doesn't go away. Everybody wants to reach that over status. You could come out on stage if you're that over and just talk in the microphone and say knock, knock, and the fans are going to go absolutely bonkers. It's amazing how music plays that part, because if I just walk to the ring and there's no music, I've got to rely on my personality now to get myself over. Sure. Music helps the entertainer get over in such a way, because we all relate to music in some way in life. And
like
I think
when I see a comic who sits on a stool on stage, and I walk around, I'll use the mic stand. Yeah. I'm constantly doing something. When I see a comic sitting on a stool for an hour and completely has the audience in the palm of their hands, there's no gimmick needed.
Yeah, I love it. And music is amazing. And sometimes I discover new artists when I'm on events too, just by listening to somebody's music, and they come back, hey, what's that song you used? And I go and I research, this is good workout music. I can listen to this, or it's just good music I can listen to while I'm in the car. It's no different. Like I said, music plays so many different parts to people in different ways. I have like certain songs that I have to listen to when I'm driving down the Garden State Parkway, or I'm going to the beach. Like, there's got to be some Bon Jovi in there. There's got to be some Bruce Springsteen in there, because they're Jersey boys. And it just, if you're not from our state, it doesn't resonate with you. Just like I'm sure there's bands that are from Minnesota that people listen to when they're, driving down 6 feet of snow in Minnesota. Sure. It's no different. Music plays such a huge part in everything, not just in entertainment. And so many of my girlfriend, she loves music. And, she has such a dichotomy of music that she listens to. But when I listen to her, sometimes when she plays music, there's certain music that just puts her in certain moods that she wants to feel for that moment. Mm-hmm. And there's certain music that she likes to listen to when she's cooking. There are certain styles of music. So For me, music is awesome. And through my own girlfriend, I've learned so many other different styles of music that I necessarily wasn't a fan of prior, that I actually really like now, because I've always been a metal rock guy, and I kind of, never really kind of moved into other genres just because it's a genre that fits for me. But now, being a little older, wiser, you give things a little bit more of a chance.
Yeah, you
So
realize
music,
there's a lot of great things out there that you,
right?
when you stop putting labels on things,
Yes.
that's when you're able to open up a little bit.
Yeah.
I have
always
to
thought,
ask you, why Def Leppard?
I knew this was coming. I knew this was coming.
I
Yes,
love them. I love
my
them. Don't get me
number
wrong.
one favorite band. I don't know why. I think a lot of it is my sister's influence, being 6 years older, loving Def Leppard herself and other bands too. But my parents were always telling my sister, well, you're going to all these concerts. You remember back in the day, there used to be a concert every week at the Meadowlands in New Jersey. Yeah. And my parents would always be like to my sister, well, I've got to work. Your father's got to work. Well, who's gonna watch your brother? So it's either you stay home or you got to get a ticket and take him. Luckily, my father was awesome and would sit and get tickets for us. And he'd always get an extra ticket for me anyway. That's just the individual that he was. But I don't know. There was just a certain thing that resonated with me with that band. And again, I was 8 years old when I first saw them live, when they did their In the Round tour, when Rick Allen first came back after losing his arm in that car crash.
Wow.
And I saw him play, and there was like an inspiration right there from me. And he's an influence that I learned how to play drums. My parents got me a drum set, and I put in my grandmother's garage, and I would play for hours, play in school during music class. I wish I had followed through on it. And you know what? I'm still young enough that maybe at some point I will get a drum set, and I'll annoy the hell out of my girlfriend and put it in her garage, and we'll be broken up about 3 days later. And
probably.
But there was just something behind it, that inspiration from him, and their music just started to grow on me more from the fact that literally every album they put out, they had more than like 4 hits on their charts. And I look at them now. I mean, yes, they haven't done a studio album in probably 5 or 6 years. But when you think about when I talk about like my passion for my business, when you look at bands that we grew up on, how many bands from the era that we grew up on are still around today, making original music and are still touring? But not only that, they're performing on a level that performers that are out now that are half their age cannot perform.
Well, that's true. I mean, but you do have the people who, you made a great point. There's a lot of people who will just tour off of their legacy.
Right.
And a lot of people love that.
Right.
Look, I saw Buck Cherry 2 years ago, and I've loved them. I've always loved them. I thought they were a great band. I'll never go see them again. Yeah. Because they're putting out records which are good, and they want to play 7 cover songs in a set. Then I mean, look, I was pissed. The whole Def Leppard Poison tour got pushed off again until next year.
I just realized that. I saw a date change the other day, and then I realized it was 2022.
Right.
But I think when it comes to music too, like I've seen Def Leppard probably a dozen times.
Okay.
And
I only seen him once, actually.
Yeah. It never gets old, because for years, one of my favorite albums by them was the High and Dry album. Mm-hmm. And in particular, there's a song called Let It Go. That's just a fast, badass riff song, heavy guitar, from the original guitarist that was there, Pete Willis. Mm-hmm. Phil Collin, obviously, replaced him. But I've always wanted to hear that song live. And they would never play a lot of stuff off of High and Dry or their or Hello America, because they were just in such a zone with Hysteria and Pyromania and Adrenalize and all those other albums. They never played those because they didn't want to be that band that had to rely on the old music, because they always wanted to create something original. So every concert I saw, through every album they released, they always played the new stuff, and their new stuff was so good that they didn't have to rely on the old stuff. Yes, they're going to pull out Pour Some Sugar on Me as an encore, or Photograph, they're major hits, but they don't have to rely on the old stuff. And to me, that resonates with me as a wrestling performer, not relying on the old stuff, coming up with new stuff and trying something new and getting it over in front of that crowd. And they to me, that band as well, they have found the fountain of youth. Phil Collins is such a exercise nut now. He's in better shape now than what he was 20 years ago. Joe Elliott hasn't aged, and if he has, I think it's gracefully in a way. Rick Allen still looks the same. Rick Savage, a little worse for wear. Vivian Campbell has gone through crazy health issues with cancer and has battled that, and the whole band is an inspiration in so many different ways. And I think for me, that's why they still resonate with me as my favorite band. Not necessarily because of their music, but I can relate to them on an entertainment style and a platform in what it means to me to be a performer, because they wouldn't be touring at their age, and not say that they're crazy old, but they're not going to tour if they know that they can't tour at a certain level that they know that they're supposed to perform at in front of their fans.
Where they're not doing 1,000-seat theaters either at this point. They're playing stadiums
still. They're playing major arenas. Yeah. And that's another thing too. That's a testament to the longevity of their music and their fan base that has never given up on them, and they give back. They are, Rick Allen is a very big philanthropist. He's out and he does these crazy paintings off of the beats of his drum kit. And he goes and makes appearances at different painting shops and malls and that nature. And all the money he makes off of this stuff goes to a foundation. It doesn't go in his wallet. So
I've seen a lot of his paintings. I've seen a lot of his paintings. They used to have them at the Hard Rock. There's a Wentworth gallery at the Hard Rock. When I was there, you'd go in and you'd see all the Paul Stanley paintings. And I saw the Rick Allen ones. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. Like, let me see how much one of these are. And I'm like, fuck that one-armed fuck. I ain't paying that much money. Seriously. No, there's no way. There's no way.
Right. And obviously they may be geared towards, a different level of someone that has disposable income. But whenever they do tours, they do meet and greets. And yes, it's expensive, but they don't put that money in their pocket. They openly and publicly announce what that money goes to. Mm-hmm. And they're always, looking to give back. And to me, that's another piece that I like to hold on to of being a veteran and a leader in an entertainment industry, is giving back.
You know what Bert Kreischer does? You know what Bert Kreischer does for his meet and greets now?
No, I have no idea.
He was one of those guys who would always go and take pictures with everybody and have a beer, whatever. Then he got so big that he was doing theater shows where he was doing 2 shows in a night, and he couldn't do that. So now what he does is he does a raffle. So you can buy into a raffle, buy as many tickets as you want. 50 people get a meet and greet at the end of the night. The 51st person gets the meet and greet and gets all the money.
Wow.
So that's a guy. He said in an interview, there's been nights where it was $9,000-$10,000, and there was nights where it was $85,000.
Wow, that's amazing.
And doesn't take a dime of it.
Nope.
All yours.
Doesn't need to. So I'm that to me, and that's the reason why there's certain bands or music I don't listen to, because of the personal nature of that individual and how they conduct themselves. Mm-hmm. Because if you're going to be in that public eye, then you have to hold yourself to a certain standard. And there are bands that have great music. I will never pay a dime to see them live. And if I have, I won't ever do it again. And one example I'll give you is Pearl Jam. I always wanted to see them live in concert. But literally after every song, Eddie Vedder was stopping for 5 minutes to discuss his political views. And I'm not there for that.
I agree.
Your views are your views. I'm there to pay you to see music, to hear you play Jeremy or, whatever. So please, can we curse on this?
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up and play Jeremy. I don't want to hear what you have to say.
Right.
Because that's not what I pay for. And because of that, I do have Pearl Jam songs that are on my playlist, but every time they come on, I actually bypass because it turns me off.
I just talked about this today, actually. It was when my mom said to me, there's a concert I want you to take me to, and I don't care, you're taking me. I'm like, oh, fuck, what kind of hillbilly shit does you want me to see now, right? And I go, who is it? And she goes, Kid Rock. I'm like, all right, I'll take you to see Kid Rock. She loved the one song. So she buys the tickets. We go. He plays the first song. It was great. Second song was it stopped. And he goes into this big sermon. A pulpit comes out. And it was a 20-minute pro-Trump.
Jesus.
Yeah, like video. Now, me personally, I didn't mind it. My mom hates Trump. Now, your normal people like Kid Rock, again, Kid Rock's fan base now is a lot of right wing,
right,
Southern rock kind of vibe. But there's also the, very liberal who, I love the song with Sheryl Crow. It was such a sweet song. I'm going to go see Kid Rock. They're turned off. I don't want to hear one fucking thing about politics.
Right.
One of my favorite bands in the world is System of a Down.
Yeah.
Most of their songs are political.
Mm-hmm.
But when they go on stage, if they go on at 8:00, they will not talk until 9:30. They go and do 25 songs straight through.
Yep.
They can be about politics. I don't give a shit. I don't want to hear. I don't want to have that rammed down my throat. Bruce does the same thing. I'm a huge Bruce fan, but he does the same exact thing too. Yeah. There's a time and place for it.
Yeah. And the last time I saw Bruce was so long ago that he may not have been doing that. So to me, the music is still fine with me. I still listen to it. But again, we're all in different times, different climates, and everybody is allowed to feel the way they feel. They're allowed to enjoy one party versus the other, whether you want to, be a Republican, Democrat, that's fine. No worries. I just don't, that's not what I pay you for.
Right.
I pay to hear your music. And that's one thing that I know, again, seeing Def Leppard a dozen times, they have never done that.
Right.
They stop and they talk about the meaning of a song. They put over, each other in terms of, why this song is the way that it is. They give a little bit of background of how that song came to be. And every performer on their shows has a solo. So it's not just the guitar solo. Like Rick Savage has a bass solo during certain songs. Rick Allen always does a solo after Switch 625. And it's incredible for a guy with one arm who can have an altered drum kit, but can still throw off these beats is incredible. So for me, Def Leppard is my number one for more than just the music. It's everything about the band and what they represent and who they are, their longevity. Because when I think of bands that when I was a kid listening to, and they're still performing at a level today, there aren't that many that are like Def Leppard that are out there that I can even think of. And yes, there may be bands that play the small amphitheaters and the small buildings like a PNC Art Center, but I can't think of that many bands that are producing still original music in the later 2000s that are selling out arenas and stadiums.
Very few.
So for me, that's why.
That's it. Yeah. The Foo Fighters.
Sorry. Yeah.
The Foo Fighters. That's about it.
Yeah, that's really, yeah. And they're, so when I think about that, two bands, because I've seen so many great bands come and go over the years, or bands that have been one-hit wonders, or they had one great album and then their follow-up wasn't great, or their first two were amazing and then their third fell flat. And by the time the fourth album comes out, they're really nowhere to be found anymore at that point. And I think about that too. The band has never broken up.
Right.
They've lost a performer. They almost lost Rick Allen, and they've never broke away. Joe Elliott went and did a solo album, but still kept Def Leppard as a priority. Phil Collin went and did his own little thing, but still they never stopped. And they're always finding different ways to engage in their fans too. They've come out with something called The Vault, which is like a website. And they've done interviews where they literally have opened up boxes in their homes of stuff from their tours and their career over 20, 30 years. And just like we talked about music before, everything that they have in those boxes is related to a memory.
Right.
And it can all probably be traced back to a specific song that they wrote as well. Or they were in the studio when they were writing this song and a riff came up and it became this song. And there's love seeing that when you give fans a glimpse into how they write their music or what their history is. And it helps for newer fans that have never really heard it, because there's a lot of people out there that have heard Pour Some Sugar on Me, but have never heard any other song by them. And it gives them a voice on a different level as well.
I agree. This was fun.
A lot of fun.
I didn't pick on you. I was
Not
trying
too much.
to.
You did in the beginning, but
Well, I did in the beginning.
I grow on you like a fungus. That's why.
Well, you are a fun guy. Oh God, I wanted to
That was
smack
awful.
myself in the fucking face for that one.
Yeah, that was terrible. I would.
Why don't you
with that one?
Why don't you give our listeners your social media stuff so they can look you up and follow you?
Yeah, and then as soon as they follow me, they'll unfollow me as well. So
I did, but go ahead.
I know. That's why I saw you friend request me 6 times. Yeah, I'm on Twitter and on Instagram at Shawn Donavan 01. I'm just Shawn Donavan on Facebook. My name is spelled SHAWN, not like your little way of spell SEAN.
Which is the correct way, but go ahead.
But no, there's always different ways. But those are you where you can find me on social media. I also have a YouTube channel where I put up all of my work as well. Just type in Shawn Donavan and you'll see a bunch of terrible matches, and then you'll see my page listing is there. They can follow that too, and just having fun. I'm enjoying life.
It's all you can do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the show, guys. Subscribe to the page again. Subscribe to the channel. We will have some. Maybe we'll have Shawn back later on. We'll talk about another fucking shitty band that he wants to talk about. But,
there's plenty of them.
I love Def Leppard. I can't say anything. I love them, but
we can talk about Prince. We can talk about Queen. We can talk about Motley Crue.
There you go.
There he is. Yep. We can talk about so many.
Thank you again. This has been a lot of fun. And next week, Jeffrey Paul will be back. And guys, we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad he wasn't here tonight.
So am I. No, I'm only.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.